Yeah, I just want to say thank you for doing this with me, Brian. For those of you who don't know you, you're a Toronto-based photographer here in Canada. You're also the manager for the Contact Photography Festival, and more importantly for this conversation, the Contact Photobook Lab, which is a photo book store based in Toronto, affiliated with the festival.
That's right.
I know you through basically my love for photo books. So you are
Yeah.
my direct source here in Canada that alleviates me the shipping cost, the you know transferring money to other currencies and everything like that. So I mean, you have
Yeah.
been a huge help for me in that, and I'm sure many other Canadian photography lovers. Also, thank you for providing that service to us.
Yeah. Very happy.
So the first thing I just kind of want to jump into in our conversation is, a lot of the times, you know, what goes into running a bookstore in general, maybe even more so, maybe a photography bookstore, since it's a little bit more niche, is,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have a vague idea of what goes into the daily runnings of an operation like that. Quite often it can just seem like you sit around surrounded by books all day waiting for people to buy one, but of course that's
Right.
not the case. So I was
No.
just wondering if you could walk me through some of the things that you consider, necessary for, a successful photo book store, and what kind of roles do you occupy as the manager of the shop?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me some space to talk about this. I guess maybe just by way of kind of jumping into that conversation, the Contact Photobook Lab is kind of unique in the sense that it's like an initiative and kind of a branch of the Contact Photography Festival. So in that sense, yes, certainly not just sitting around, because my day job within the festival is, planning this annual festival of
Hmm.
photography. It's happening every May. It's all across the greater Toronto area. It's a mix of, emerging students, hobby photographers with more established artists, career, like emerging can be a number of different things, but also,
Yeah.
Wide age of ranges and sort of career milestones. So the Photo Book Lab was kind of something that's been in development in different forms over the last probably since 2018. It was taking for a while the form of different photo book based exhibitions.
Okay.
From there, we started a photo book fair as well, like a one-day event. And eventually we also added sort of like almost a portfolio review program, but for photo book dummies specifically. And
Okay.
all of this was sort of born out of, the festival used to host and I used to manage a portfolio reviews program that was more broadly photography based, not just books. So we would invite not only publishers, but gallerists, magazine editors, photojournalists.
Hmm.
And as time went on, more and more, like the people that their slots filled up the fastest in terms of like who photographers wanted to meet were the publishers, and
Okay.
more people were bringing photo book dummies rather than, a portfolio of prints as well. So that's sort of that alongside, we have a photo book grant called the Bertinsky Grant, which was sort of started by one of our board members, Edward Bertinsky. He donated his Governor General's Award to us. So that's a $5,000 grant over or every year. And it's, it's continued. We're, I guess, 10th year now, heading into 11th.
Okay. Wow.
So I give all that kind of context to sort of, establish where the seed of the idea for the store kind of grew from. The festival has, working at the festival as the manager there, I've started to see, how hungry a lot of people are for photo books, both to collect them, but also to make them. So once we started seeing how well the photo book fair was going, and that was an opportunity for us to bring in about 20 different publishers, internationally, but also locally, to sell books directly to people. To like you said in your introduction, like the opportunity to not have to pay shipping fees, customs, the exchange rate,
Yeah.
just to be able to buy direct. That was we realized how rare that opportunity was for a lot of
Yeah.
people in not just in Toronto, but like in Canada.
Canada, yeah.
Um, so that is kind of how the store started. We thought, well, you know, one day is great. It goes really well, but you know, clearly I'll bet you, you know, there's an appetite for this year round. So, you know, we had plans to open something up in 2020. Of course, that got delayed and deferred a couple of years. And it wasn't until May 2022 that the store sort of opened proper and, you know,
Okay.
was open to the public. So, in terms of, yeah, what that looks like, my day to day with it, it is kind of almost like a little side hustle within my regular day job. And, you know, I don't have retail experience. Like this is something that I'm truly learning as I go.
Hmm.
And I think I have, you know, luckily like a lot of like autonomy and sort of leeway within the festival to sort of pursue this. And, you know, it's something that is helping, you know, connect photographers in the area with books, with other enthusiasts, but also, yeah, it's a rabbit hole for my own interests as well, certainly, in terms of like what we order, what is available to people. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of hats that I'm wearing. Like certainly I'm sort of managing any requests for for photo books that people want to have in the store,
Hmm.
managing orders, managing shipping. So it's, yeah, it's, I feel like in terms of like its success, it's sort of reached a bit of a plateau right now because we're just because of like capacity to actually have it open to the
Yeah,
public.
yeah.
We have a website as well that I manage. Um, so it's, yeah, it's a lot of data tracking as well,
Hmm.
certainly. Um, just looking at what is working, what's moving, what's not.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, trying to stay on top of everything that's coming out, which, you know, increasingly feels impossible.
That's well, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's so much.
yeah, which is a great problem to have, but yeah, just in terms of, I think where I'm focused more on right now is just sort of handling, like trying to get to know, like I certainly know you, and I know your tastes in photo books. I
Yeah,
kind of know when I get stuff in, like what you would be interested in, but
yeah,
trying to have like, you know, kind of a broader client base, like someone like, you know, a database of people where I can sort of reach out to and be like, I know you'll be
yeah.
interested in this book, you can get it from us. Yeah, doing a little more proactive like customer retention, I guess, if we're
And
gonna
yeah, yeah. No,
sort of
no,
like, you know, the jargon, but yeah.
no, and that makes a lot of sense, and that kind of leads me into the next thing I wanted to ask you about was, how do you, not only maintain relationships with your clients, but also, how do you develop and maintain relationships with different publishers, independent artists, distributors, which I know is a big one as well, and how does that look here in Canada, where we might not have access to certain distributors that are maybe more prominent in the US and most certainly in Europe and stuff like that. So, how do you manage within, your smaller limitations as, a bookstore that's affiliated with a festival. So you're not exactly like an independent bookstore that, can kind of like go off on their own budget and do what you want with it. So, working with that kind of idea of understanding a client base that you're building, but also working with what's available out there in the world in terms of publisher relations, distributors, and artists. How do you kind of like think about all of those things working together?
Sure, yeah. I guess in two ways. Like at this point, you know, having this annual photo book fair is a great opportunity to connect with publishers like directly. Like
Yeah.
you know, they're invited to the festival, because it's still like a small 1 day event. It is by invite only, but it's an opportunity to, yeah, get to know them, you know, face to face,
Yeah.
get to show them, you know, a little bit of Toronto, introduce them to other people in the photo community here, and then from there it's also, you know, a great opportunity to, you know, get some book stock directly for the shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, uh, I'm sort of lucky at this point, you know, this is year 4, where I kind of have enough just like requests and cold calls from publishers who have, sort of like seen that there's actually a store in Toronto now. I think just a recent example would be, Charcoal Press, who
Yep.
just published this. They published a number of great books recently, but the most recent one was by photographer Marshall Toe, who is
Yep.
Vancouver-based, a photographer I wasn't aware of. And they were like, "Hey, you're kind of the only game in town. We don't have a Canadian store to carry this book, and he's based in Canada, so we would love to really like find a way to get it to you." And that really made a lot of, that was an easy
Mhm.
one to bring in for that reason. And then of course, because of the cost of shipping and customs and all of those fun things, it's like, okay, well, we might as well get a bulk order and
Yeah.
have some other titles that they published on offer. So at this point, it's I feel like I have more sort of requests that I can feasibly bring in.
Yeah.
I think certainly something that I'll be sort of managing more this year is bringing in more books on consignment.
Okay.
Of course, it's much simpler, less tracking if I can just do like a wholesale order from a publisher directly.
Mhm.
And then that's the end of the transaction, and they're with us until they sell. But it's of course, bringing things in on consignment is an opportunity to bring in fresh stock on a regular basis without like an upfront investment necessarily.
Mhm.
So in terms of, it's really just been, that sounds so simple, but it's really just a matter of just reaching out directly. It's usually by email, but I've connected with publishers and artists on Instagram, certainly through social media.
Mhm.
And just to say, this space is here. We're here in Canada. We're based in Toronto. We would love to have, either you at the fair. If not at the fair, we'd love to get some stock in to connect people with you. So that's kind of where it's been moving at the moment. And then, once that starts, a lot of publishers are really great at just reaching out every, quarter to say, here's what's coming up. Would
Mhm.
you be interested in any of these titles? So that's kind of where the relationship building comes in as well.
Yeah.
And in terms of like working, people that are coming in to buy, it's again, like it's sort of just keeping track of what's going out the door.
Mhm.
Um, having conversations with people. And I know we're going to get into this later, but having events in the
Yeah.
space as
Yeah.
well is really crucial for getting to know people, getting to know their tastes, and just having a talk about like what they're interested in and what they like to look at. So in terms of that, that's kind of I would like to sort of go beyond some of the people I know directly, and I haven't had a lot of time for it yet this year, but just to do some more just like general, like, hey, I'd like to invite you to the shop. Like, I think I
Yeah.
know you're interested in photography. I have these books that I think you'd be really interested in. Just again, bring them into this space really changes, the opportunity to not even necessarily make a sale, but to just like talk to people about what they're interested in, why
Yeah.
they like books. Like there's just, you can talk for hours with people on
Oh,
that.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially since, there's so much breadth in the photo book world. I mean, there's so many different types of books. I mean, so many different types of projects, I mean, so many different types of treatments. So of course, having
Yeah.
those one-to-one conversations really matter because, as idiosyncratic as a book is, the person interested is just as idiosyncratic as well.
Yeah.
And kind of like branching off of what you were speaking about before, like things like taking books on consignment and stuff like that. You guys are very friendly towards, independently self-published artists as well as, independent publishers and stuff like that. And I was wondering if you can maybe, for people who are perhaps, self-publishing their first book or, starting up a little press or something like that, maybe
Mhm.
some advice for them on what to look out for or look for whenever they're approaching a bookstore to maybe stock their books.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, certainly just like a really easy way to start is just by looking at what is already available at that store, that can sometimes give you a sense of, is this, like, is this have, any, like, a wide sort of like scope of
Mm,
work and type of books? Is it more of a curated collection? And
mm,
you sort of have to answer for yourself, like, maybe would I fit into this or not? Or at the very least, I can give you, as a photographer reaching out, to sort of like, what's your argument? Say, hey, I've got this book. I think it belongs at your
mm.
store based on XYZ. Um, we're sitting at around 200 titles currently in stock. So I would say we're still quite curated in terms of what comes in.
Mhm.
Um, and again, that's just sort of based on, the space that we have available, the capacity myself and other staff have to just be at the physical space, which
Base,
is
yeah.
shared with a gallery. It's shared with the festival's headquarters. Um, it's not like a Tuesday to Saturday sort of like retail space hours. It's also
Yeah.
on the second floor of a building downtown, so it doesn't have street level sort of visibility. Um, all of these things are sort of coming into play in terms of like, who we are, and how much we can bring in, and sort of
Mhm.
decisions, and that sort of process. Um, but in terms of like reaching out to us directly, I'm always happy to hear from people about what they're making, what they're up to. I think it's just something short and sweet, like a one pager that's just like, this is what the book is, this is what it's about.
Mhm.
Um, I'm always interested to hear, where else it might be stocked.
Okay.
But also just like, yeah, maybe their imagined idea of like who their audience would be. I
Got it.
think what's maybe interesting, having done a few pop-up events with the store, like bringing it off-site. I've done a few at like a garage space outside of
Mhm.
Burdock Brewery in Kensington. I brought it to Rooney's Photobook Cafe, which is another great space in Hamilton, so not too far from here. Is how people are looking, uh, how people are looking for books. Like, what is like sort of their idea of like a keyword, for example.
Okay.
Um, I think for a lot of collectors, they might be coming in saying like, what do you have from this publisher? What do you have from this specific artist? But on more of like, sort of, let's just say general public, someone who's just interested in photography,
Mhm.
whether that's in book form or not, they might come in saying like, hey, I'm really interested in books about aging parents, or
Mm.
like something that is more like a topic, or like, of course, I get a lot of requests of, like, do you have any books about nature, or do you have books
Yeah.
about XYZ, which is I think just getting back to what I'm coming to with like a curated selection, like,
Yeah.
like a lot of, I would say the majority of our current stock list is like, could be classified as like an artist book. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like, it's not necessarily driven by the subject matter. It's, it's the artist who has like a narrative that they're trying to tell
Yes.
in book form. But I think that's kind of, I've had to sort of like think more deeply about what the books I have in stock are about, and how I can talk about them to people beyond just like, this book is by this photographer, and this is their stature, and this is by this publisher,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Um, Coming back to what your question though, like in terms of like, a photographer reaching out to us, like, how do you situate your book and your work within, sort of broader community, and like
Yes.
what it's about, what other photographers you might be into, or other books that you feel like some kinship with.
Mhm.
It's always really helpful for me to hear as well, especially if I can't also like see the book physically
Yeah.
right off
Yeah.
the bat, which is always, a lot of video kind of flip throughs can get you so far, but having the book in your hand obviously makes a big difference. So
No, absolutely, absolutely. That's perfect, great advice, honestly. And something else I wanted to talk about, which kind of ties into that, because I mean, I'm sure this would be, if there's anybody in the GTA area, or if they're making a trip down there as well, there are plenty of things that you guys do as a bookstore that are much more, I think any good bookstore really is a community pillar. no matter what kind of bookstore it is. I think they're just places for people to meet and share ideas. And, you guys, go a little bit above and beyond that by hosting, like artist talks, workshops, book club meetups. And, like you said, you even do offsite events from time to time.
Yeah.
So kind of like my question is more, like it's like what kind of role do you see you guys having in terms of the community building aspect in Toronto and also more broadly Canada in general? Like have you guys ever thought about maybe even like having like online workshops or making like artist talks available online, perhaps like one day eventually or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, definitely. I think what has sort of shifted my focus as well in the last year or so is putting more of a focus on events and like bringing the community into the space. Um, I think we have what I sort of see the space as, or what I'm trying to work towards is, you know, I've had lots of conversations with photographers and artists and other people about how the photo book publishing sort of landscape in Canada is pretty thin, I would say,
Yeah,
compared to
it
a lot of
is.
other countries. Um, Not only in terms of like access to like printers and
Hmm.
paper stock and just sort of knowing like who do I talk to about XYZ. Like
Yeah.
I've there's so many people who have a seed of an idea for a book or a project that they want to sort of maybe translate into book form, and they're just not really sure where to start. And there's so many different facets of bookmaking, from sequencing and editing work to physically making a book or a maquette,
Hmm.
learning about binding, um, collaborating with designers. I think design
Yep.
is like a really important one.
Big time.
I think it's like photography can be like a very solitary sort of
Yes.
pursuit as an artist, and really collaboration is so important with books, I think, in terms of getting feedback on how it's sequenced, but also like getting some design help from someone a little bit outside maybe
Mhm.
of your work, where you can they can kind of be maybe like someone who can kill your darlings in terms of like, this isn't working, or
Yeah.
this is where this needs to go. um so, and I've just met so many people through the festival. I've been working there for 11 years now, and I sort of know who is in each sort of little pocket doing, skilled at certain aspects. And like, I want the lab to kind of be this space to try to like thread the needle of connecting all these people, whether it's happening at the space or whether we are sort of like a resource available to people. That's kind of the goal with what I'm working towards it
Okay.
on. Because we are not a publisher per
Yep.
se, and there has been a little bit of confusion, I think, about the name, the Photobook Lab. Like, we're not necessarily producing anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
We are hosting a lot of, like you said, artist talks. We're hosting workshops around bookmaking, around
Yep.
book publishing, but we're not in that space yet where it's just something I can't take on as a third hat to wear,
Yeah. Yeah.
role, unfortunately. But I do see a lot of value in, and I do see a lot, like there's a really open sort of space for, um, specifically in Toronto and Canada, in terms of, we have so many great designers. We have a lot of fantastic photographers who are self-publishing works,
Yep.
but no sort of like overarching, you know, Canadian photo book publisher. And
Yes.
uh, yeah, I think that's a big gap, and uh, I'm not sure quite how to handle that in terms of, or I don't know what the answer to that is at this point, other than what I'm working on here, just sort of like connecting people who know people and are
Yep.
making things, and at the very least, just like setting them up to have a conversation with someone that might inspire them to,
Hmm.
to look at a book on the shelf, to just be like, oh, this is a way I didn't know I could make a book this way. Or
Yes.
um, yeah, it's like, I'm just as happy if someone comes in and looks at everything we have in store, and they don't walk away with anything, but like, they just kind of need to know what's out there. And
Yeah.
I do in terms of, again, that idea of curating, like I am sort of trying to bring in as many different examples of like what a photo book can be.
Yes.
We certainly have zines. We have more sort of classic, cloth bound hardcovers. Some books that are unbound, and you get to mix, the
Yep.
sequence yourself. Yeah, lots of different. There's just so many different ways. There's a tarot deck by Aaron Friend-Lettner of
Yeah, that one looked really cool, actually.
that is still a book as well, because it's almost like, again, you get to almost sequence the book as you move through it. So that's a long answer for what I see the space as and what I've sort of been treating it as. In terms of like, yeah, opening it up, I think that's just kind of one of the big advantages that I have with the Photobook Lab is it's within, an established gallery and like office space.
Yeah.
So the overhead of that is already sort of built into the festival. And, we have this great reading room space that hosts the books, but also like you can put some stuff up on the wall for an exhibition if you want. And yeah, it's really just a matter of like, if someone just needs it, like has a book that's coming out and they need a space, like if I'm available, then I try to make it work. And that's just been really exciting and rewarding for me. Just to like see what's happening, like again, just an opportunity to see what everyone is working on.
Yep.
I think a lot of this kind of came from the idea of like some of my friends used to just like, I just invite them over to the bookstore sometime, that would like, off hours, and just be like, let's look at
Yep.
some of the new stuff that's here and talk about it, or like bring in a book that you're interested in. And then it just became, well, if we're interested in this, I'm sure there's tons of other people that are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
trying to follow that instinct of my own curiosity and what I know some of my friends and acquaintances are as well, and also just like people that I'm meeting through the festival and working with through the festival as well. So that's kind of what's brought us to now. Yeah, we've hosted workshops about binding. We've hosted workshops about sequencing and editing. At this point, we're sort of focused more on, we're bringing in publishers for our photo book fair this year, and I think they're going to try and bring some events with them. Again, like, when people are coming into town, it's a short fair, so it's like, okay, well, what other opportunities are there to sort of learn from these people that are coming in? And yeah, it's like, I guess maybe the shortest answer, if you wanted to just cut this down to this, is just like providing access to not only getting books without shipping, handling, exchange rate, looking at them before you might want to like take them home. So just like access to the great people that are in the photo community here, and just like learning from them and hearing about why they wanted to make a book. Like, I think there's just like so many different ways to answer that, and different ways to make a book, that it just, there's been no shortage of
I can't imagine. Also, I mean, it cuts down on, travel costs to a certain extent, considering a lot of workshops are abroad, and the workshop itself is usually quite expensive, and then travel expenses and lodging, so to have something that's local, I mean, it's a big help. I'm sure that goes for any country in the world that has a smaller art community, compared to some other places and stuff like that. And then, that kind of leads me on to another question that I kind of wanted to ask, from your perspective, working in the bookshop and everything like that. We're in a very socioeconomic stressful time right now, and that's definitely going to be affecting not only the way people consume, even though I don't like that word, but purchase books and enjoy them, but also how people are going to be making them, and how publishers are also going to be reacting to that. I can imagine that publishers, due to the rising cost of paper and shipping and stuff like that, they're probably going to want to take less risks on emerging artists and stay more with established artists. So it's going to probably push more people towards self-publishing, and on those terms, just because access to good quality printing is usually way above, the financial limit of most people. Do you
Mhm.
think we're going to see, in the coming years, more handmade artist books and zines being published by artists and small presses just to kind of mitigate that cost factor of not only, the cost of making the aesthetic object, but also, for the person on the other end buying it as well?
Yeah, I think there's room for all of it. Um, I will say, yeah, certainly in terms of yeah, customer decisions. Like I think sales have been steady, but like I think lower this like
Mm,
the last year, and I'm sort of like forecasting that again for this year as well. I think that's just based on the fact that, yeah, the simple math of a lot of books are more expensive now,
mm,
for us to get them, or for them to be published. And yeah, I think a lot of people in my community certainly, and in the arts, um, both on an individual and institutional level, just funding is really tight. Like disposable income, I don't know a lot of people that have a lot of that to go around
yeah.
right now. And yeah, they're really putting it to the real necessities of life, and even that is really difficult for a lot of folks. So yeah, it does sometimes feel like a big ask to bring in a book that's like, it's a beautiful book, but it's $100, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, but at the same time, I do see, people are always making zines and always self-publishing things. I think the different, like, in terms of like a book that has, a publisher's, sort of stamp on it, or
Mhm.
it's being released through a publisher versus self-publishing, there's not a lot of cost difference to that sometimes. I think because a lot of certainly with a lot of publishers, what you're really working with them on and accessing is their distribution network.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, a lot of artists and photographers have to come to the table with either the money to bring this book to life,
Hmm.
or at least their network of I know this many people that would buy this book, or I know where I
Yeah.
could buy this book, and like just to sort of justify that sort of publication. So I think there, in terms of, yeah, where people are making more zines or handmade things, I've been seeing that over the last 5 years, that there's space for all of it.
Hmm.
It's interesting from like a retail perspective at the store that a lot of the zines, they don't move as fast as the more expensive, or
Hmm.
like the books.
Yep.
I try to have, again, like a mix there to sort of like reach a bunch of different people in terms of where they're at, both with their interests but also their wallets. Um, but I don't know. I think it's something that people are, with zines, sometimes people are more interested in looking at and taking some ideas from it rather than taking home and owning it.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know how to fully account for that yet. Um, like, and that's certainly not to like say that there aren't worthy zines out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, they don't move quite as quickly from the store. But in terms of, yeah, decisions people are having to make to produce a book, I think the handmade aspect is certainly part and parcel of people's desire to be less online and
Yeah.
to just have something physical and tangible. I know I've seen a lot of work that's photographers are showing through Instagram, but it's their sort of handmade books that they've been putting
Yes.
together, and they're a lot of people's practice seems to be based fully around that. And whether it's something that is made to be sold, or it's really just a one of one edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I get, like I said, I think there's room for all of that right now. Um, it might, I think the other thing that I'm seeing um, from publishers is like maybe there's less books coming out every year. They're supplemented by publishers hosting workshops themselves on an
Hmm.
annual basis, and that's sort of like helps subsidize the cost of actually producing the books. Like
Books. Yeah.
I don't think it's any real secret to say that like photo books are not necessarily, or publishing generally is not, a huge money making
No, absolutely not.
industry. It's again a question of access and bringing bringing your work to as many people as possible. And
Hmm.
um, whether you're a collector or just someone who's just interested in photography, it's just the simplest way to have access to a photographic object that you can look through over and over again. You can keep it in
Yeah.
your home, in your library, rather than an exhibition that is more ephemeral, certainly. So
Yeah.
um, I think we're going to see people. I don't know. I would, at the same time, I would like to see. I think we said earlier how hard it is just to stay on top of everything
Yeah.
that's being produced. And the other thing that's, of course, on my mind, particularly after hosting um, them for a workshop, was the sustainability of this industry. And how do we need 1,000 copies of every single book? Does every project need to be a book necessarily?
Hmm.
We are going
Hmm.
to produce it. What are yeah, we hosted this workshop with the Sustainable Photobook Publishing Network, which is run by Tamsin Green out of the UK last year. And yeah, just thinking of not only like on a material, physical, like the materials you're making a book out of, the paper, the ink, those are
Hmm.
certain considerations. But again, like edition size, like is an edition of 20 a better play for
Yeah.
this project than 1,000? Um, all those sort of questions have to be kind of brought into the mix as well. So, like I said, there's room for a lot of it, and um, I don't necessarily think we're going to see sort of one sort of dominant sort of
Like,
brand.
yeah, yeah, over the other. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
I would agree with you there. And kind of like, yeah, following that thread there. I mean, I know you are someone in your own photographic practice. You do make a lot of handmade maquettes, zines. Some are just one of one for yourself. Some have been items to sell and stuff like that. You have used, very utilitarian materials in some of them, like in your COVID diary, using construction paper and just tipping images into those and stuff like that. I'm just kind of wondering, like on a personal level for you, outside of like, like the festival and the bookstore, but in your own practice, how do you think about the book form for yourself?
yeah. Thank you. That's a good question too. Yeah, I think it's really what I've learned the most through, yeah, not only working at this store and sort of managing the store, but just through the festival and other related activities, is just the importance of making an argument for a project in book form. Like there's so many ways
Mm,
to present photography, and it's just not enough to you know bind a series of photographs and sort of call it a day. Like
mhm,
that goes from everything to the what photos are being included and how, and but also like um yeah, does the material that you're using really match the narrative of the book, the photos themselves? Does it make sense together? Like it's really something that you have to think of really holistically. I think,
mhm.
or at least to my mind, the most successful books are the ones that really take that into consideration
Yeah.
um, in a deep way. And yeah, I think it's like it can be done very simply. Like yeah, those little COVID diaries I produced during the lockdowns here were largely just photographs I was making within the house of
Mhm.
my family and just objects. That time when couldn't really leave the house, and
Yep.
all of our photography became very insular. And because it was working with a lot of family photos with those, construction paper just sort of made sense in terms of that sort of feel and the subject matter, and it's just something that I truly just had on hand. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like
Yep. Yep.
um, that can be just a really simple way of making decisions. It's just like, what do
Mhm.
I have? What's
Yep.
what's in the closet? And it also felt like um, just kind of like a simple way to play around with the form, and to just actually, that was kind of my first experience with like binding my own books,
Yep.
sewing them together. And like with those, I printed um, just digital photos, and then just sort of like cut them and like double-sided tape them in. So
Yep.
um, yeah, something that was very handmade, and it was like it felt very good to do also during that time
Hmm.
period where, again, we couldn't leave the house or
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
And the first one I just kind of made just to mail out to some people and just to, you know, again, everyone was mailing things and
yeah,
yeah, it had a positive response. So I made a second one that was kind of made on demand. And again, that was like that sort of addition also made sense for that sort of project
yeah,
is
yeah. Of course.
just make it as it goes. Um, so that's something that I'm usually thinking about, but I'll also, you know, sort of recognize that cost and budget are limitations
Hmm.
and often can be like really creative, fulfilling ones. Again, like working with what you have
Yeah.
and sort of making the best of it. I know use a lot of recycled
Yes.
materials and a lot of
Yes.
testing around as well. So that same spirit I think is really important. And yeah, more of like a DIY approach as well is important. Like you have to think about like who are you trying to reach as well, like
Yes.
with how you're making a book. Like um, you know, just as an example, like last year we launched Chris Donovan's book, the Cloud Factory,
Hmm.
which was published by Gost Books, and Chris has published in a number of different formats as well. He has some great zines. He shoots in like black and white 35 millimeter, but
Hmm.
also, more of like this long-term documentary project he did about his hometown.
Yep.
And that was, that's more of like, that's a pretty, by his own admission, like a, not inexpensive, proper book
Yes.
object, like a hardbound book. And, uh, one of the questions that he got during that talk or that launch was, like why, given that he has some like a lot of other projects that he produced more DIY,
Hmm.
and again because it was like, he wanted to reach a certain amount of people or a certain certain people generally, like why
Yeah.
choose to do it this way. And I think for him it was like in a lot of ways uh having a book like that almost like legitimizes it to certain
Yes.
audiences. It is something that again is going to change your access of like who gets to see it and where
Hmm.
it's seen. It was really important for him to have it in libraries and for people beyond just like the immediate people he was making the work about, for different eyes to see it, I think. And like for a certain audience, like seeing something that's more of like a proper hardcover cloth bound book
Yeah.
lends it that sort of like legitimacy that a photocopied zine wouldn't, you know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
So those are other questions that you have to think about in terms of like, yeah, material, like who do you actually want this book to reach? And like in my case with those COVID diaries, it was like I just want to send this in the mail to some friends and like
Yeah.
again thinking cost effectively and simply with what I had and who I wanted it to go to. So yeah, that's something that
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about, and yeah, always very interested to hear from people when I see their own work in terms of like why they've chosen to go about it the way they did.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's something that is, the more you get into it, the more you have, I think that's why, like, what you guys are doing with the photo book lab, having that access for people to come in and see such a variety of different works is
Yeah,
very important because it opens up your eyes to, the plethora of possibilities that, the aesthetic object can take in the book form and, like why decisions are made, what things click with you, what things resonate with you, what things make sense to you, but also, what things make sense for the work, which
mhm,
is where, having like, like a designer or an editor, sometimes is worth, if you're, looking to make something serious and you're looking to, put the money into the printing of it, you're best to go and, put some money into, working with a designer or, someone that could be a designer slash editor,
yeah,
because, having those outside perspectives to say like, okay, like, like the idea that you're communicating, the form that you're thinking of doesn't work for it, or
yeah,
maybe there's a better form for it, maybe there's a better way to communicate, like what you're saying and stuff like that, because we all have different ways of working with our photographs. And I know for you, something that you seem to work a lot with your photographs is, of course, color, but you also like to work with pairings a lot and different juxtapositions of, the everyday, which, for me, looking at your work, there seems to be, a real love and attentiveness for the everyday, but also for that quotidian kind of like aspect of humor that we find all around us in mundane situations. And I was
Yeah,
just kind of like wondering, if you could speak a little bit to, your own practice and, your interest of, playing with images in that sort of way.
sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think for my own practice, like it took me a while to figure out what that looked like and where I sort of felt like what mode was like the most comfortable for me. I think like I have a journalism degree, so
Okay.
I sort of like came to photography first as a hobbyist, and then more was looking to do like documentary projects and journalism. And I worked with a group of photojournalists for many years, more on the admin side of, um, you know, similar to what I do at Contact, which is sort of like planning and hosting events and
Hmm.
workshops, but with the specific, yeah, documentary photo lens. And I did workshops myself in that vein, and was just I just didn't really necessarily feel like that was like where my work sort of made the most sense. And like,
Okay.
like I was like not necessarily up for, following through on a project for years and years and years. And I also knew by the end of my journalism degree that I was not someone who wanted to be hustling and sort of like pitching stories and coming up with ideas all the time.
Mm.
So I think, working at Contact, where a lot of my work is obviously steeped in photography, but I'm more behind the scenes, sort of like setting people up for success and
Hmm.
connecting people. That's sort of where I sort of began to understand my own work a little bit more as well. And certainly working at the festival, I'm exposed to, all number of types of like, obviously not just documentary photography. In fact, that's
Yeah.
like probably like one of like the smallest sort of windows of what I see at work. And again, just like sort of like whittling down my own ideas of like, okay, well, like photography can be this, photography can be that, and where do I sort of feel like I'm situated? And I think for me, yeah, like you said, like very kind of quotidian. Like I do a lot of walks for taking photos, and just like yeah, looking for things that are kind of funny to me. Uh, just kind of the way my brain works is like I'm always sort of just like cataloging things that I
Mm.
see, and like that was something that I wasn't really aware of, like not being everybody's mode until I sort of explained that to someone once, because we were sort of talking about this idea of yeah pairings and how I keep on top of that. And a lot of it is just sort of like looking through archives and looking at photos, but also it's not uncommon for me to see something in the world and be like, oh, that looks or that would match either in shape or color or pattern like something I took 2 months ago. Like I just sort of am
Got
aware
it.
of how those photos like might live together, and
Hmm.
that's sort of how I'm keeping track of things. And once I started like making books and zines, I think that really for me made me understood my own work in terms of like, okay, well, my images are maybe not like they might not live as just like kind of single images. They really need to sort of be in dialogue with each other, and
Mm.
it really showed me how much you can like build a story or a narrative or a mood just from stringing some photos together. And I got a lot of that truly through working with that documentary photo collective. Like
Okay.
I was privy to a lot of how they edited their sequences as well, and
Mm.
um, understanding sort of sequencing as music almost. Like it can't just be you know hard notes,
Yeah.
fortissimo
Yeah. Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time. It can't be all staccato. You got to have some flow, and you really can get that across with books as well. Certainly,
Yep.
both in
Absolutely.
not just like the subject matter of the photo, but the size of it, the placement.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so, and the other thing I'll say that sort of helped kind of inform my own practice was we hosted Jason Fulford for a workshop one year. who again is like a fairly prolific bookmaker and
Hmm.
photographer, and he talked in that workshop about his to his mind there's two types of photographers. There's like collectors who are
Hmm.
documenting things that they see in the world kind of obsessively to some, and then there's sculptors who are making photos that they don't already see in the world.
Mm.
And I found that very useful in terms of, again, understanding my own
Yeah.
practice and just thinking like, oh, uh, there is a place for sort of like for me to present my work, and largely it's in pairings, in sequences, whether it's in book form or not. When Instagram was a fun place to be, that was also like a good place to play
Yeah.
with that and to share work in that way. And I think again during COVID, when there wasn't a whole lot of other things to be doing, that was like for me like a fairly productive like creative time.
Yeah.
Um, I think not only because just having the actual time to
Yeah.
work on photography was there and available for once.
Hmm.
But also I think we were all very isolated, but in a way that also was like, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on what I want to do and what I'm interested in. Like Instagram is like obviously really flattens photography in a lot of
Yes.
ways in
Yeah.
terms of you can be inspired a lot, but then you can really just start to your own view of your photographs can kind of get distorted and warped because you just
Hmm.
see others all day long, and you might sort of start to absorb that even subconsciously.
Yeah.
And I think I was just like, okay, I'm just going to make the photos that I want to make, and certainly they were influenced by other works, but that's all sort of like how I've kind of gotten to where I am in terms of how I like to make work and how I understand photos and how I understand books as well.
Yeah.
Um, I would love to have more time for that now. That's yeah. Speaking of time, like I think in a lot of ways, and I'm not resentful of this by any means. I think having the photo bookstore is its own sort of creative pathway, and,
Hmm.
and I think has kind of the lines between my own personal practice and that has gotten fairly
Blurred.
blurry.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
in not yeah like a not unexciting way. I think it all works. It all dovetails at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, to sort of keep those things in separate silos is, I think, a mistake. But
Yeah.
having said that, I think I've been putting more of my own sort of time, interest, energy into, into more community-based initiatives
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
like having talks and workshops
Yeah.
and just hangouts, photo book clubs, and that's been rewarding in its own way. But I do feel after a couple of years of doing that, I would like to just like maybe have a little residency to just focus on another
Yeah. Yeah.
project. Yeah.
No, 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 absolutely. I think we all go through that. We all go through ebbs and flows in what we're doing. Like right now, I'm starting to host these talks. For how long I'll go on doing this, I have no idea. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's when I really gave myself a lot more license when I just started labeling everything that has any relationship to do with my work is just like I'm a consistently inconsistent person. It's like
Yeah.
my interests are all over the place. So I'll pick up one thing, run with it until it stops nourishing me, and then I usually pick it back up like anything else. And I kind of was wondering, just to kind of close this conversation out, I was just kind of wondering, I mean, you know, I know I'm myself obsessed with photography and I kind of, like surround myself with it by my own volition. But, like your job entails, constantly being around photography. And, of course, there's many benefits to that, for
Sure.
whenever it's also part of your practice. But I'm also wondering, like, what are some like palette cleansers for you, whenever, you feel oversaturated with photography?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think music's a huge one. I certainly like a lot of other my they're all creative in their own way. Like I don't write my own music, but I do play.
Hmm.
But I go to concerts as often as I can. Again, yeah, those are another part of the creative industry that is getting more and more expensive by the day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's always a very cathartic experience.
Mhm.
Um, I often, I think particularly after the festival has wrapped, I kind of have a little bit of a photography moratorium. Maybe like
Mhm.
not like I don't have really hard boundaries on it, but I do try to spend more time looking at just different types of art, whether it's painting
Yeah.
or just going to other exhibitions in the city here.
Mhm.
Um, whether it's something that I am like already have an interest in, or I think just like being exposed to different mediums is really important. And
Yes.
there's always overlap when you go. Like I think to sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
pigeonhole your viewing experiences into just photography is not, you could be doing it in a healthier way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, certainly just like I'm a big avid cyclist. Just like that's a great way to explore the city, and it's also
Mhm.
like to me it's such an easy way to like be exposed to the world and like to make photographs.
Mhm.
Like I'm always stopping, and like it's just yeah, it really is like in my mind they're really closely related. Um, but also, yeah, pretty avid reader as well. Um, I feel like movies are very similar to photography. I think a lot those inform each other really obviously.
Yeah, like anyone, I mean, who is creative and passionate in any way, I think it's very conducive to have multiple interests. And I think, perhaps that is, a gift of photography as well, is that it is a medium that can be interested in anything, really.
Sure. Yeah.
It really has, it's a very limitless thing. It's a medium that's attached to your body, and whatever your body's interested in, it can
Yeah.
try to interact with it in
Yeah.
one way or another, successful or not. But I
Yeah.
mean, it is a gift of the medium. So I think, having all these, varied interests outside of the medium of photography is naturally just going to make your work, more interesting, wider appeal, and just, inherently more holistic just by that nature alone.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I come from music before I even got into photography. So, I know, that was a big eye opener for me, was when, I stopped trying to keep things separate and was just like, okay, well, let's just let these things start
Yeah.
talking to each other, because they're already talking to each other in my head anyway. So like, why am I, kind of like, putting a hard stop on these things, from interacting with each other? And that was when everything just started to click, and I really started to, felt like I was finding my own voice within the medium and everything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Brian, I have to say thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it'll be helpful for a lot of people. And, if you're in Canada, the Contact Photobook Lab is an online shop as well. So
Right.
no matter where you are in Canada, you can check it out. If you're a photo book lover, I mean, it is a great way to save on cost and also support local at the same time. And of course, the photography festival runs every May, and the photo book festivals with the
Yeah.
photography festival is
That's
linked
right. Our
together, right?
yeah. So the 2026 Photo Book Fair is going to be on Saturday, May the 2nd. That's at Stephen Bulger Gallery in Toronto here. So yeah, we'll be announcing pretty soon like some of the vendors that we're going to be having
Okay.
there. And the day before that, May 1st, is when we have our photo book dummy review. So if
Okay.
yeah, anyone out there has a project that they're working on that they want to get some feedback on from publishers, other editors, other photographers here, it's a really great affordable opportunity to do that. It's pretty informal. Yeah, we've been doing it for about 5 years, and we've got some really great feedback. And I've seen at this point, several books published out of that opportunity.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I recommend.
And also the Pretensky grant, that submission is open for that in the summertime, I think, right?
Yeah, shortly after the festival.
So,
Yeah, the deadline for that will be in September, near the end of September, and yeah, that's sort of the sort of line that we want to have for people is hopefully take a workshop with us, but then
mhm.
yeah, get some feedback on a in-process photo book dummy, bring that criticism, fold it in, and then submit that that project to the Brzezinski grant, and yeah, and then go from there.
Awesome. That's some amazing stuff that you guys are doing. So again, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity to talk about it. I really appreciate it.